Good days, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another very special money focus segment with Alexforbes. And today we're talking to Zander Loots, once again, a financial planner at Alexforbes, about offshore investments, which is very important. We'll be speaking about what are the benefits of doing so, why you should do so, and of course, how Alexforbes can guide you on that journey. Zander, how are you doing today?
Good in yourself.
100%, all good.
Great.
So, offshore investments.
Yes.
Now, what are some of those benefits? Why should one be thinking about how do I allocate a portion of my portfolio offshore? Why?
You are, and thanks for being. It's great to be back. I think offshore, it's a very, very interesting concept, and I think this discussion around offshore has really grown recently. Not just with our regulation picking up how much we can invest offshore from a pension fund point of view, but we've had a lot of clients coming in investing discretionary money offshore. And I want to talk a little bit about taking discretionary money and how we can invest. But to your question, I think looking at offshore, if you look at our rand in the long term depreciates. So if you invest in offshore assets, you take advantage of that depreciating rand over the long term. Just to give you an example, 10 years ago, the rand was about 10, 11 rand to the dollar. Beginning of this year, it was almost clipping 20, I know it's come down now. At the time of the recording, I think low 17s. But still, if you would have invested 10 years ago and you pulled your money out, not talking about any growth, from 11 rand to 19 rand, that is a big, and that is actually extra profit, offshore investors or people investing offshore can actually gain. I think also diversification in offshore markets. Our JSE stock market's very small compared to offshore markets. Now, I made did a little bit of research. Our JSE is about more or less $1 to $2 trillion. If you have to now say dollar base, which is quite it's quite substantial. But just the S&P 500, the biggest companies just in America, the biggest 500 companies in America, the statistics are over $50 trillion just in the capital alone. And they're just 500 companies in America, not talking about all the other companies, and obviously around the world, in Europe and China, and you name it. So I think also it gives you a little bit of diversifying just outside of South Africa, which is great for some people, just to diversify their portfolio. And I also think, just the growth in offshore equities. The last 10 years, we've seen significant growth as well in offshore equities. The statistics over the last 10 years average was about 15% year on year. And that also contributed to some extra growth that you wouldn't have found in the JSE the last 10 years.
Okay, and then when it then comes to the practical element of doing so, right?
Yes.
So people who are invested, how can one then start looking into, okay, how can I practically begin this process or journey?
There's a few ways. If people can actually invest offshore while investing in South Africa. It's a weird concept, but you can actually have unit trust funds or a fund that is rand dominated, but that specific investment fund has offshore assets. So a lot of these funds, just for example, are feeder funds. So you invest in a rand-dominated fund, it has offshore assets, and it feeds back to a rand. So whatever the assets does, equities, bonds, cash offshore, if you have a performance there and also the long-term depreciation of the rand, you get that benefit in that. And it's also a cost-effective way for people because investing in physical currency can be sometimes a bit more expensive. So not converting or having the practicalities of converting a rand into a dollar or euro or pound, you can actually let it be in rand, but you can also invest indirect into offshore assets. So that's the first way. And the other way is, mostly that I want to focus on today, is taking your money and also buying an offshore currency, investing there, buying dollars, investing in funds or certain type of platforms that's available. Yeah.
Okay. And then speaking about those platforms, now, when it comes to specifically with Alexforbes, how do you guys guide an individual on that process that's interested in investing offshore?
Yeah, so we have a few offshore platforms that we work with. I think the first platform that I'll mention is we have an Alexforbes global platform. So that's a unit trust platform, and what nice about that platform is it actually has a joint spouse, so you can actually put your spouse, if one passes away, you don't have to worry about probate administration offshore, having an offshore will or the money lying there and your estate take a few years for your estate to be resolved for the money to be paid, your spouse actually becomes the main owner of that unit trust. So that's one of the two. We also work with third-party funds as well. For our third-party platforms, we work with Old Mutual International, 91, and Allen Gray, just to name a few. And we also, those three actually provide endowment, offshore endowments. What's nice about that, just to quickly speak about that, is you can actually appoint beneficiaries. So if you should pass away as the investment owner, as the life covered on that platform, the funds will be paid to your beneficiaries. It doesn't go through your estate. You can save a bit of executors' fees that could be quite substantial when certain individuals pass away, and you have that nice process of not having to have a will offshore. It pays over to whoever beneficiary. They can be in South Africa, or a lot of I think people viewing today. Where are the kids these days? They're overseas,
Yeah,
and we find a lot of our clients, their kids stay in, let's say, Europe or England or America, and we invest their money, make the kids the beneficiary because the money's going to go to them. And then what happens when they pass away? The money just get paid. Doesn't have to come back to South Africa and all that.
It just goes straight into
Exactly. So that is a quite nice platform as well. And depending on the platforms, you have your tax with the endowment. You have your the nice tax efficiency as well, because it's taxed within the platform. The individual doesn't get taxed. The insurer pays the tax on those offshore endowments.
Okay, and then to close off, who should be doing this, right? So is there like a certain criteria of, an individual that should be thinking about it, or a tax bracket? Like who should be looking into offshore investments?
Yeah. So I think, offshore investing is, I think, for clients that wants to maximize their diversification. If they want to have a little bit more exposure, not just to local markets, offshore markets, and also maximizing long-term growth. We've seen in the last 10 years what the difference more offshore exposure had on some clients' portfolios. So I think that really suits some clients. And also, but with that, I think it's important to understand the risks, because whatever you do, wherever you invest, there are risks.
Yeah.
So, especially, let's come back to the rand. Now, it was very nice for the last 10 years, depreciating from 11 to 17, where we are now. But over the last year, the rand has appreciated 14% against the dollar. So let's say you invested a year ago and now you want to pull your money out. It's a 14% loss on the currency. Now, luckily, there was offshore growth and all that, but that minus 14%, irrespectively, would have diminished your returns. So yet again, volatility, it's in our view, it's a long-term process. If you want to invest, we don't speculate. We invest in a strategy that is for long-term gains over a long term, because rand will be volatile. But with all that, who should invest? I think you need to seek professional financial advice with us, because we can look at the individual and we can see what their needs are, their portfolio, and then adapt a great plan, an offshore plan, according to where they are in life. And I think that is the most important thing. The offshore shoe doesn't fit everyone.
Yeah.
It needs to be custom made for a specific individual. And I think that's the most important one.
Okay. Good, sir.
Thank you
so much. Thank you very much. I appreciate. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it. Offshore investments is an important decision to make if that's something you're interested in. And Alexforbes is always going to be by your side, hand in hand, walking you through that journey. This was another special episode of Money Focus with Alexforbes. Catch us next time.